you take a shallow look at something, like a building, you just kind of glanced at it, then you know you're familiar with it. You've seen it. But if you do tadabbur of it, meaning you know all sides of it, you even see the back of it. You've taken a good look at it, you've explored it thoroughly until you even see the back of it. You've got a full view of something. Which one takes longer, to glance at a building or take an entire inspection? Inspection. Tadabbur in the Quran, which is the word for reflection, is you don't just read the ayah, you dive into the ayah and find out what's behind this ayah for me. Behind this ayah, there's a lesson for me. There's the sign, this is what the ayah says. The human being was created greedy, quick to consume. That's what the ayah says. Behind it, what is it saying about me as a person? That's tadabbur. Now tadabbur itself is two-pronged. It's a two-part thing. On the one hand, tadabbur is a reminder. It's spiritual in nature. Reminder is in the heart. Allah tells Allah, بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنَّ الْقُلُوبِ. Right? Dhikr is in the qalb. I say this all the time. So on the one hand, tadabbur is, spiritual. On the other hand, tadabbur is actually a thought process. It's reflection and thought and a pursuit of wisdom. It's an intellectual thing. And it's both of these things. Now how do we know it's both of these things? Allah complains in the Quran twice about people not doing tadabbur. Complains twice. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Once He complains and says, the problem is spiritual. He says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. Why don't they reflect on the Quran? Why don't they look deeply into the Quran? Or is it the case that their hearts have their locks on them? Is that the case? When Allah complains that the hearts are locked, obviously He's addressing an intellectual or a spiritual problem. He's saying reflection on the Quran is not there because you have a spiritual problem. Conversely, He's saying reflection on the Quran will address your spiritual problem. Reflection on the reminder through the Quran, etc. Okay? So it's a spiritual exercise. The second, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. How come they don't reflect on the Quran? Had it been from other than Allah, they would have found a lot of contradiction in it. Roughly speaking, that's what Allah says. Now the thing is, to find contradiction or find consistency, is that a spiritual exercise or an intellectual exercise? That's an intellectual exercise. He says, if you truly reflected on the Quran, you would come to the conviction that there are no inconsistencies in it. There are no contradictions in it. It has to be the word of Allah. That's an intellectual exercise of tadabbur. There are two sides of it. But the thing is, when do we engage with salat, with tadabbur? With Quran, with tadabbur, I said it in the sentence before, in the question, it's salat itself. Salat is the exercise of tadabbur. Salat, when we recite Quran in the prayer, that is supposed to be the moment of reflection and thought. Ideally. Why is that? Because the concept of thinking clearly means you're not thinking about other things and you're not distracted.